Chapter 53:27. What do you mean? Audius stared at Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen smiled faintly. Nothing. I'm just asking out of curiosity. Sir, you just said that Leonard is pure and kind. What do you think now? You. Audius glared at Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen, on the other hand, was looking at the outsiders today. Since he was here to preside over the situation, it was naturally up to him to punish Leonard. The others were also watching and waiting. The outsider was frowning and hesitating. He actually hesitated for such an obvious matter. Audius, this happened within your jurisdiction. You have an unshirkable responsibility. After a moment, the outsider finally spoke. Audius nodded and said, I'm willing to accept the punishment. The outsider said, Fine, you'll be fined a year's salary. Yes, sir. Zi-Chen's expression changed slightly. This punishment was out of his expectations. Then the outsider said, As for Leonard, sir, that's fake. Leonard was still mumbling, but he obviously had no confidence. Go back and reflect on what the rules of Dharmasol are. Leonard was stunned, as if he couldn't believe his ears. This was the punishment. The surroundings were in an uproar. The punishment for Audius was barely acceptable. After all, he didn't participate in it from the beginning to the end. At most, he was protecting Leonard. But now, to Leonard, the instigator, he was only asked to go back and reflect. This was a huge calamity, ignoring the rules and being lawless. If it were anyone else, they would have died hundreds of times. But Luan Ao had only said a word of self-reflection. Leonard reacted and quickly cupped his fists to thank the outsider. I will definitely reflect and won't disappoint you, sir. Sir, he committed such a big crime. Why is he only reflecting? Zi-Chen said with dissatisfaction. Could it be that in your eyes, after violating Dharmasol's rules, it's fine as long as he reflects? The outsider glanced at Zi-Chen. Don't be anxious. There's still your punishment. My punishment? Zi-Chen was stunned. Did you get the wrong person? Impudent. The other party was furious. You killed hundreds of people. How could I be wrong? Zi-Chen was dumbfounded. He had taken out the evidence. I know what you want to say. You want to say that you were forced to kill, right? The other party sneered. But since you have the ability to kill them, you naturally have the ability to escape. Why didn't you escape on your own? Zi-Chen was exasperated. The ancient talisman has sealed heaven and earth. How can I leave? I tried to leave, but Luan Ao and the others wanted to kill me and wouldn't let me go. The other party said aggressively, Then why didn't you run? With your ability, you naturally have the strength to break through and leave. Zi-Chen said they surrounded me. How could I run away? Once I escape, they will definitely pursue me. At that time, I won't have any room to fight back. Besides, I'm in the trial and haven't offended anyone. If they want to kill me, why should I run? You're still quibbling? You could run, but you didn't. Naturally, you wanted to kill them. The other party snorted coldly. You call this not guilty? Zi-Chen felt that his worldview had been refreshed. They wanted to kill me, but I didn't run. Instead, I killed them. Is this a crime in your eyes? Zi-Chen pointed at Luan Ao and said he ignored the gathering of Dharma souls and wantonly gathered people to kill his companions. Yet, you only asked him to reflect. He threw Dharma souls face to the ground and stepped on it. You pretended not to see it, and now you want to convict me? Even if you have double standards, can you not be so obvious? There are so many people watching. Aren't you afraid that they will spread the news of Dharmasol's conduct? Impudent, you still dare to threaten me? The other party's eyes flashed with killing intent. Today, I, Lucent, hereby announce that Zi-Chen ignored Dharmasol's rules and willfully killed the innocent. He will be executed immediately. The other party gave the order. Execute your mom. Zi-Chen was completely enraged. This lousy place is filled with trash like you. I'm not going to serve you anymore. Damn it. He threw Dharma Soul's face to the ground and stepped on it. Yet, you put on airs in front of me to protect Dharma Soul's dignity. I'm not going to play with you anymore. From now on, I'm leaving Dharma Soul. I'm not going to stay in this lousy place anymore. Humph, you want to leave? Do you think it's possible? The other party's figure flashed, and he went straight for Zichen. Zichen's eyes flashed with a hint of madness. At this moment, he did not mind letting the path sword appear. This piece of shit must die. However, before the other party could get close, a palm appeared out of thin air. Smack! Lucent was sent flying backward, and a few teeth were mixed in the process. The hunchbacked old man from back then suddenly appeared. Foul air, a nest of snakes and rats. After the old man appeared, his face was very pale. You haven't left yet? After Lucent saw the old man, his face changed drastically. You can't tell right from wrong. Letting a piece of trash like you live is simply an insult to Dharma Soul. The old man attacked again. A palm print descended from the sky and slammed toward Lucent. Smack! Smack! The sound of the slap continued. Lucent screamed as the bones in his body shattered one by one. As powerful as he was, he did not have the slightest strength to fight back in front of the energy palm. In the end, a slap landed, and Lucent was sent flying out of the city. Get lost. Tell your manager to come and see me. See what the current Dharma Soul Alliance has become. Lucent turned into a stream of light and left. As for the others, they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The old man looked at Ogiest. 1 year of salary forfeit. Then he looked at Leonard. Go back and reflect on yourself. A hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. Even if you want to protect someone, you should at least put on an act, right? Get lost. All of you get lost. The old man was angry. Before the higher-ups come, Armai will temporarily take over the manager's position. Ogiest, get lost and reflect on yourself. As for how to deal with that little bastard, wait for the higher-ups to come and decide. The crowd that had gathered quickly dispersed. During this period, there was a lot of discussion. Disregarding other things, Lucent's actions became the topic of discussion for the next part. There was also the lawless Leonard, who also broadened people's horizons. The old man went deeper. This time he wanted to personally oversee this place. Zichen also went inside. The assessment was considered to be over, and he was qualified to stay here. Actually, Zichen wanted to leave, but Armai asked him to stay. As for the reason, it was actually very simple. The next day, someone came to count the points. Zichen only got a few dozen points, but he was definitely first. This made Zichen very surprised. During the period when Armai temporarily took over, it was enough to give Zichen a breakthrough pill. After all, the old man was still here, and no one dared to bend the law. However, someone suggested to open the training ground again. After all, the time last time was too short. Armai only said one sentence. Don't tell me you think there are too few deaths? If there are more deaths, who can bear the responsibility? At this point, everyone dispelled this idea. Thus, Zichen was able to obtain the breakthrough pill in advance. After giving Zichen the pill, Armai went to the old man's residence. After entering the room, the two didn't speak. After a while, Armai said, "It seems that they are determined to control this place and won't allow any wills to exist." The old man said, "How's Zichen doing?" Armai said he still wants to leave. The old man said, "Give him the identity of a free spirit." Armai looked at the old man. After so many years, the Alliance's desire to control has become stronger and stronger. With this incident, it will be very difficult for Zichen to get some resources from here in the future. Instead of this, it's better to let him keep his identity and go out on his own. Okay. A few days later, another person came. This was an old man. He wore a plain hemp robe and walked in through the front door. He first looked up at the sky, and the hidden array patterns appeared one by one in his eyes. He really woke up. Not bad, not bad. The old man praised with a smile. Then he looked at the bustling city and nodded repeatedly. However, when he heard some discussions along the way, he frowned slightly and seemed a little displeased. This is really not right. The old man in hemp robes went deeper. The hunchbacked old man was already waiting for him. The old man in hemp robes saluted him. Greetings, Senior. The old man waved his hand. I didn't expect it to be you. The old man in hemp robes smiled bitterly. Lucent went back and told everyone what happened. When everyone heard that Senior was here, they didn't dare to come, so I had to come. What do you mean? Seeing that the old man didn't want to invite him in, the old man in hemp robes waved his hand and isolated a space. The Alliance has ordered that all branches must have absolute control. So even if the spirit awakens, we can't break this rule. The old man said, if you want, the spirit can continue to sleep. If not, we will help it sleep. Although the words were plain, they carried the alliances, well, that couldn't be disobeyed. That was absolute control. The old man said, I don't care about the spirit. I only want to ask you how to deal with this matter. The old man said, Ogiest will be dismissed immediately. As for Lual, since his family has contributed a lot to the Alliance, he can be spared the death penalty, but he can't escape punishment. He will be stripped of his reserve status and expelled from the Alliance. That's it. Of course, Zichen has been wronged. The Alliance will give some compensation. The old man in hemp robes took out a pill. That's it. The old man asked again. The old man said, Zichen can also go to the treasury and choose something. The old man took the pill and approved of their method. Senior, will you go back with me this time? The old man in hemp robes asked. No, I don't have the right to go back. No, it's been so many years. Everyone misses Senior. You want me to die outside, right? The old man didn't want to continue this topic and said directly, Zi-chan won't cause trouble for you. After taking the things, he will leave. As for you people, you can do whatever you want. The old man in hemp robes nodded and then said hesitantly, Senior, the things in the treasury must have the right strength. The old man said disdainfully, What? Are you afraid that I will help you cheat? I'm not Ogiest. Even if I use the resources privately, Lual will still be an idiot. Of course, of course. With this, the old man in hemp robes was relieved. Although he hadn't been here before, he knew that there were many good things in the treasury. Even a heavenly law would be envious of these things. The old man in hemp robes didn't leave immediately. He wanted to see Zichen enter the treasury. After that, he had to reorganize the place. Almai took the pill and went to find Zichen. In this way, Zichen would have 2 breakthrough pills. Once he reached the 9th level of annihilation, he could attempt to advance to heavenly law. After that, Almai brought Zichen to the entrance of the treasury. You can choose one of the things inside, but the prerequisite is that you can break the seal. Chapter 53:28. When Almai said this, many people beside him were also listening. They were all the people in charge of this place. At this moment, they all appeared and opened the restrictions of the treasure vault according to the orders of the higher-ups. Zichen nodded and walked in. What entered his eyes were colorful lights, glittering like treasures. This was the foundation of the Magic Soul Alliance. Zichen's gaze quickly swept over and discovered that every item here actually had a seal on it. However, these seals were nothing in front of Zichen. Zichen glanced around and went straight to the 2nd floor. There were a total of 4 floors in the treasure vault, and all the good things were on the upper floors. Zichen didn't stay on the 2nd floor for too long and went straight to the 3rd floor. Even though the items here were sealed, he could still feel the powerful aura. After a quick glance, Zichen saw the ancient talisman. He was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that there would be such good things on this floor. He went to the 4th floor again. He was looking forward to what was on this floor. As soon as he arrived on this floor, Ziqin saw the World Annihilation Bell. Even though it was a replica, its aura was still shocking. And there were 2 such replicas on this floor. In addition, there was a set of armor, a sharp saber, and a rectangular jade box with a seal. He didn't know what was inside. There were only a dozen items. Ziqin's first target was the World Annihilation Bell. As he approached, he felt a wave of pressure sweeping over. Ziqin's expression changed slightly. He felt the pressure before he even got close. What would happen if he got closer? Buzz! Ziqin used his own power and activated his powerful true body. He resisted the pressure and moved forward. The nearby seals also burst out with a dazzling light. At this moment, the people outside didn't retreat. When they saw the light on the 4th floor, they were all stunned. Then one of them laughed and said, "A spell destroyer can only take away the items on the 2nd floor at most." He actually went to the 4th floor. Interesting. How is this interesting? It's clearly greed. A man's greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. That's right. If the seal recoils, even if he doesn't die, he will be seriously injured. Not to mention the 2nd floor, we might not even be able to open the 1st floor seal. Everyone mocked and ridiculed, but with Almai here, they all restrained themselves. Worry appeared on Almai's face. Ziqin was knocked back by the seal, and this was only because he was close to it. He hadn't even tried to open it yet. No. Ziqin shook his head. He didn't need to try to know that it was impossible to break the seal and take away the replica. This had nothing to do with one's attainments in arrays. It was only related to one's strength. The seal was not intricate and required pure strength and power, which was what Ziqin currently lacked. When he looked elsewhere, it was almost the same. Are we going to the 3rd floor? Ziqin was a little reluctant. After all, he could only come here once. It would be impossible for him to come here again in the future. When there was only one chance, it was only natural to take the best. After some hesitation, Ziqin took out the World Annihilation Bell to see if he could forcefully break the seal. If it really didn't work, he would take out his Dao sword and try it out. However, if he did that, it would cause a big commotion. It wouldn't be good if it caused more trouble. Just as Ziqin was thinking about whether to forcefully activate the World Annihilation Bell, he saw the World Annihilation Bell vibrate slightly. Buzz! There was no sound of the bell. Only ripples were created. The golden light wasn't so dazzling. The ripples went straight ahead. When it got close, it was blocked by the seal. However, a strong collision didn't happen. The World Annihilation Bell's ripples actually slowly passed through the seal. Ziqin's eyes widened bit by bit, and his eyes were filled with shock. The ripples passed through the seal with some difficulty and landed on the replica. In the next moment, there seemed to be a passage connecting the 2 sides. The power of the replica flowed through the passage and was absorbed by the real thing. This works too. Ziqin was completely stunned. He blinked his eyes. After confirming that this wasn't a dream, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. This was definitely a blessing from the heavens. Last time, the World Annihilation Bell swallowed the replica, and its power increased a lot. Now, there were 2 replicas here. Once they were both swallowed by the World Annihilation Bell. How strong would the World Annihilation Bell become? However, after the ecstasy, Ziqin felt a hint of fear in his heart. What if someone came up at this moment and saw the scene? Such a strange scene made one wonder what grade of World Annihilation Bell Ziqin had. He nervously glanced at the stairs. Fortunately, no one appeared. But what if someone came later? Ziqin felt a little uneasy. His gaze began to wander around, thinking of a solution in his mind. It was too abnormal that this place was so quiet. Therefore, he had to make some noise. He released his soul power and sensed those seals. He found that each of them was very powerful, especially where the 2 World Annihilation Bells were. The seals were extremely terrifying. That sword seems to be weaker. Ziqin's gaze fell on that sword. It looked ordinary. There were no patterns on it, and it didn't emit any light. It was like an ordinary stone sword that was polished from an ordinary stone. But for it to be placed in this place, it was obviously not ordinary. The World Annihilation Bell didn't need to be controlled and could automatically swallow the replica's power. Zi-Chin, on the other hand, walked towards the stone sword. When they were still 30 feet apart, the seal around the stone sword released a pressure. It's indeed weaker than the replica. Zi-Chen immediately activated his power and moved forward against the pressure. The seal's power was increasing, but it was within the range that Zi-Chen could withstand. Using the power of the 8th stage realm, Zi-Chen finally walked to the seal. He punched out. Boom! A huge tremor was heard and a strong repulsion force was felt. Zi-Chen's body was pushed back. When the people outside heard the commotion inside, they all started laughing loudly. 4th level, he really dared to make a move. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. What kind of joke is this? This is called overestimating oneself, all right. In the 4th level, continuous rumbling sounds were heard. Everyone's mocking laughter continued. Almai listened by the side and felt embarrassed. Those mocking laughter were directed at Zi-Chin, but it was also directed at Almai. Almai said, "Why don't I go inside and persuade him?" "No need, don't persuade him." Someone immediately said, "That's right, it's good for young people to have some drive. What's there to persuade? If he's tired, he'll naturally rest, haha." The others started to speak out and didn't want Almai to persuade him. Naturally, they wanted to continue watching the show. Zi-Chun was pushed back again and again. His expression gradually became serious. "I don't believe it." Golden light shone around him and a strong aura flowed out. This time, he decided to use his strongest power. Immortal Punch. Like a glaring golden sun, it exploded in front of him. Accompanied by a huge tremor, the seal started to distort. However, there was also a strong rebounding force that landed on Zi-Chen's body. Zi-Chen was immediately sent flying. Not bad, not bad. His endurance is still okay. This drive, many young people can't compare to him. I just don't know if he vomited blood. Everyone laughed outside the treasure vault. On the 4th floor, Zi-Chen stood up. He glanced to the side. The real one was still devouring the imitation. He didn't know if it was because of the seal, but the speed was not fast. Zi-Chen needed to buy some time. As for himself, he originally thought that he could just casually pick one. But after a few attempts, Zi-Chen found that this sword was not impossible to take away. The slaughter spirit appeared, then turned into a stream of light and flew forward. It also caused quite a commotion. At the same time, Zi-Chen stood in the distance and released his soul power. He wanted to carefully sense the seal and see if he could use some ingenious method to open it. Compared to the other seals, the one in front of him was the weakest. Perhaps the things inside were also the worst. But for Zi-Chen's current level, the things here were all treasures in his eyes. He found a weak area, but he might not be able to break it. Zi-Chen controlled the slaughter spirit to move forward, but he couldn't get close at all. During this time, he used the immortal punch again, but it was still useless. Zi-Chen frowned. If he wanted to try again, he had to take out the path sword. This was a very big risk. He spread out his soul power and carefully probed the surroundings, but he still didn't find any traces of others. Let's go all out. Zi-Chen gritted his teeth and prepared to give it a try. He took out the path sword. However, before Zi-Chen could unleash the power of the Dao sword, the simple and unadorned stone sword seemed to be suddenly activated. Swish! A light lit up on it and directly passed through the seal, arriving in front of Zi-Chen. Pa! The seal was broken. Zi-Chen subconsciously held the stone sword, only to see that the originally simple sword body suddenly appeared with patterns. These were all divine inscriptions. The simple stone sword also began to erupt with a powerful aura as these divine inscriptions appeared. Zi-Chan was worried that it would cause trouble, so he immediately put away the path sword. Swish! As the path sword disappeared, The light on the stone sword gradually dimmed, and the powerful aura was also instantly restrained. Soon, the previous scene was restored. Zi-chan was stunned. Could this stone sword be related to the path sword in some way? Unfortunately, Zi-chan didn't have the time to explore carefully. He had already taken the item. If he continued to stay here, he would definitely be suspicious. Moreover, it had been a long time since he came in. If someone came to investigate, it would be troublesome. Zi-chen reluctantly recalled the World Annihilation Bell. As he put away the World Annihilation Bell, everything in front of him returned to normal. The replica World Annihilation Bell was still dazzling, but if one sensed it carefully, they would find that it had lost a lot of its origin power. Zi-chen took the stone sword and walked out of the treasure vault. The laughter all stopped. Everyone looked at Zi-chen in shock. They didn't expect that he really took something from the 4th floor. But after seeing the thing in Zi-chen's hand, their expressions became strange again. Zi-chen raised the stone sword and smiled at Almai, saying, "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." It would have been better if he didn't say that. As soon as Zi-chen said that, the surrounding people immediately burst into laughter. Even Almai's expression became extremely strange. He wanted to laugh, but he didn't dare to. He could only hold it in. As for the others, they were laughing and scrupulously. I didn't expect that there would really be a fool who went to the 4th floor to take a piece of trash. This sentence was heard amidst the laughter. This made Zi-chen's expression become strange. Chapter 53:29. He's definitely a genius. After spending so much effort, he actually created such a broken thing. Thinking about it, it's only Law Destroyer. What else can he take out in the 4th floor? This broken thing has been left there for so long. Finally, someone took it away. Listening to those mocking voices, Zi-chen's expression became strange. He picked up the stone sword and looked at it carefully. This thing is a waste? He smiled faintly. However, this mysterious smile seemed even more ridiculous in the eyes of others. Whether this thing was useful or not, they knew very well. Zi-chen walked in front of Almai. Almai glanced at the stone sword and couldn't help but sigh. "Let's go." He brought Zi-chen away from this place. Zi-chen expressed that he was going to leave. Before that, he went to the shop again and exchanged some resources with the old man. Almai personally sent Zi-chen off. No matter where you go, you have to be careful. After walking out of the city, Almai continued to send Zi-chen off. Zi-chen took out some resources and said, "If you have time, please help me send them to the Pure Land and give them to someone called Su Mengyao." Although there was only one spatial ring, there were many things inside. The resources inside were obtained by Zi-chen recently. The amount was immeasurable. Zi-chen was naturally not worried about Almai. Almai took the spatial ring. "I will personally send them over. Moreover, I'm also very curious about your Pure Land. I've always wanted to take a look." Almai knew what Zi-chen was worried about and said, "Don't worry. In this place, no one can harm your Pure Land. Whether it's Ogiest or the one who escaped that day, none of them can." Almai pointed in a direction. "I still suggest you go to the Northern Lands. There are relatively more opportunities there. Of course, it's also more dangerous. Law Soul is one of the few major forces in this wasteland. At a critical moment, this identity is very useful. Don't give up this identity just because of the conflict with Leonard. Sometimes the benefits are not small." Zi-chen cupped his fists towards Almai and then turned to leave. Almai kept looking at Zi-chen until he could no longer be seen. In the city, in Ogiest's room, he said indifferently, "Find someone to kill Zi-chen." "I'll go too," Leo said excitedly. "I want to see him die with my own eyes." A person standing beside him hesitantly said, "Sir, Almai and that person are both in the city right now. If we recklessly send out experts, I'm afraid. Just send one heavenly law. No matter how impressive Zi-chen is, he's still just a law destroyer." Ogiest said, "The first level of heavenly law is enough to crush him." We have quite a few people at this level. If one of them leaves, it won't draw any attention. My lord is wise. I'll do it right away. Wait, I'll go too. Leo immediately said, This time I want to see Zichen die. Augeas glanced at Leonard and said coldly, You stay here and don't cause any more trouble. He was very dissatisfied with Luo. He couldn't even deal with a mere Zichen. A first-level heavenly law quietly left this place. Just as Augeas said, there were many heavenly law here, and there were people entering and leaving every day. A first-level heavenly law leaving would not draw any attention. There was no vegetation in the wasteland, and the surrounding environment was unchanging. There wasn't even a sign of human habitation here. Zichan walked all the way to the north. Next, he had to think of a way to break through. Once he reached the 9th level of Law Destroyer, it would be much easier to advance to Heavenly Law. Moreover, after reaching Heavenly Law, he would no longer be limited by this world. 5 days later, Zichen arrived at a hilly land. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. He saw a person standing on the high ground in front of him. He looked down at Zichen and said indifferently, Little bastard, I've been waiting for you for so long. Zichen did not say anything and turned to leave. Little bastard, where are you going? The other party flew over and stood on top of Zichen's head. Zichen's expression changed. I have no enmity with you. Did you find the wrong person? Haha, little bastard, are you afraid now? Weren't you quite arrogant before? The other party laughed smugly. Zichen's eyes turned cold. Looks like I'm right. The other party was indeed here to kill him. He stomped his foot, and a formation appeared in the sky. The divine runes intersected and pressed down. Seeing this, the other party said disdainfully, Insignificant skill. He punched the sky. Light flashed, and the fist light rose into the sky. Boom! The formation collapsed directly. Then, Zichen formed a seal with both hands, and a second huge formation appeared in front of him. As the divine runes flowed, countless sword lights soared into the sky. Whoosh! 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 Cold light shot out in all directions, heading straight for Heavenly Law. That's it. Heavenly Law had a look of disdain as he slapped down again. All the cold lights were destroyed, and even the formation in front of Zichen collapsed. This was the difference. The difference between Heavenly Law and Law Destroyer. Little bastard, what ability do you have? Just use it. Grandpa will stand here and let you do whatever you want. Heavenly Law's face was full of smugness. Zichen's expression gradually became solemn. One was in the sky, one was on the ground. Under such circumstances, there was no way to fight. Once the other party attacked, then Zichen would be a live target. Even if it was a battle of attrition, it could exhaust Zichen to death. The World Annihilation Bell's current effect was not much. Therefore, ordinary attacks were even more useless. Heaven and earth forbidden technique. He went all out when he attacked. This time, the formation was less than 100 feet in range, and its power was completely compressed. Looking at this scene, Heavenly Law smiled faintly. You do have some means, but that's all there is to it. The gap between realms is like a natural chasm, a threshold that you can't cross at all. Boom! Another punch to the sky, and before the power of the forbidden technique spread, it was forcibly shattered. Zichen's face suddenly changed. Why, is that all you have? Since you don't have the strength, then I'll make my move. The other party swooped down, heading straight for Zichen. The distance between both sides was getting closer and closer. A cold light flashed in Zichen's eyes, and the World Annihilation Bell appeared. Clang! The bell rang, and the aura of destruction surged out. However, this Heavenly Law was not afraid at all. Light shone around his body, and he forcibly passed through the attack of the World Annihilation Bell, arriving in front of Zichen. Boom! A palm slammed on Zichen's chest. Zichen coughed up blood and flew backward. Tyrannical power raged wildly in his body, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of the Heavenly Law's mouth. He looked at the World Annihilation Bell floating beside Zichin and said, "I underestimated the power of this imitation of yours. I didn't expect it to be so powerful." Zichin staggered to his feet. If not for his strong physical body, he would have died from the previous palm. The combat power of a Heavenly Law far exceeded the World Annihilation realm. The two were indeed not on the same level. "So this thing belongs to me." The Heavenly Law moved forward again, and this time his speed was even faster. Zichin did not have time to react at all, and the other party was already close. Buzz! At the critical moment, he activated the immortal golden body. Golden light shone, forming a protective barrier. Boom! The Heavenly Law's powerful attack landed again, and Zichin flew backward again. This time, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The immortal golden body dissolved most of the power. He stabilized his body, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said, "You're only SOSO in the Heavenly Law realm." After saying that, he took the initiative to attack. "You overestimate yourself." The Heavenly Law's expression was disdainful. Facing the charging Zichin, his figure flashed and dodged a punch. Buzz! The massacre spirit appeared and went straight to the Heavenly Law's sea of consciousness. Clang! The World Annihilation Bell followed closely behind and launched an attack. At this moment, Zichin used all his strength and could fight with the Heavenly Law who had landed on the ground. However, the Heavenly Law's speed was extremely fast. Often, Zichin would only be able to hit the other party once after taking 2 hits. Moreover, he could not hurt the other party at all. He could not even break the defense of the other party's body. If this continued, the one who would suffer in the end would definitely be Zichin. The Massacre Spirit and the World Annihilation Bell attacked from the left and right. Mountain slashing technique. While the other party was dodging, Zichin pointed with one hand, and a sharp light shot forward. Chi! A bloody wound appeared on the Heavenly Law's body. His figure flew back into the sky. Ha ha! He who was injured was laughing loudly, because in his hand he was holding the World Annihilation Bell tightly. He took away the World Annihilation Bell at the price of being injured. "This imitation belongs to me." The other party laughed and was about to forcefully refine it. Zichin's eyes became extremely cold. "Snatch at my things, even if it's the Heavenly Law. You have to die." A weapon appeared in Zichin's hand. When the Heavenly Law saw the weapon, he was stunned for an instant. Then he could not help but laugh out loud. "This piece of trash, you really think it's a treasure?" He naturally recognized the stone sword. Zichin said indifferently, "I'll give you a chance. Put down the World Annihilation Bell and retreat immediately, or I'll kill you." "Haha, with just you? With this piece of trash?" The other party had a look of disdain. "I'm standing right here. Come at me if you have the ability." Zichin immediately activated the stone sword, and the stone sword lit up. At the same time, lines and lines appeared one after another. Zichin looked at the Heavenly Law in the sky and said, "The move that injured you just now is called Mountain Slash." And then the other party had a look of disdain. Zichin said, "This move of mine is called Heaven Slash." As soon as his words fell, a cold light flashed in Zichin's eyes. The Heavenly Law's expression suddenly changed, and he was about to dodge. Right at this moment, a bell rang out with a clang. The World Annihilation Bell that was originally firmly locked by him immediately broke free from its restraints and released a destructive power. The Heavenly Law instantly lost his mind. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. With his strength, he actually could not seal an imitation controlled by a Heavenly Law realm, unless, unfortunately, he did not have time to verify it. Zichin slashed out with his sword. Heaven Slash technique. A rainbow light shot straight into the sky. Due to his momentary absent-mindedness, The heavenly law realm stood there motionless, allowing the rainbow light to sweep past his body. After the sword, the pale Zi Chen's body swayed slightly. Swoosh! The next moment, he stepped on the ground, and his body temporarily soared into the air, catching something from the bones. It was the heavenly law crystal, the heavenly law realm's cultivation core. Following that, Zi Chen's body turned into a stream of light and fled into the distance. He had used his strength to prove that the stone sword combined with heaven/technique was enough to kill a heavenly law realm. A moment later, a person flew over from afar. Chapter 5330. The heavenly law looked at the white bones on the ground with a face full of disbelief. An arcane annihilation could actually kill a heavenly law? How did he do it? Looking into the distance, there was no trace of Zichen. The heavenly law flew forward and chased for another day, but there were still no clues. He felt that he had chased in the wrong direction, but when he wanted to turn back to chase, he had obviously missed. So he turned back to report. He has been here for 3 days. He must be a scout who came to lead the way. Then what should we do? The others might be coming soon. Let's go and kill him. Do you have the strength? Voices of conversation sounded in the dark. Zi Chen sat cross-legged on the peak and cultivated, so he did not hear the conversation in the dark. After killing the heavenly law, he sped up and fled. Worried that there would be heavenly laws following him in the dark, he used the teleportation jade talisman. After a few times, he did not know where exactly he was. He simply stayed here and began to cultivate. He stayed there for several days. Suddenly, Zichen opened his eyes and looked ahead. Someone was running towards him. Arcane annihilation. Zi Chen's expression changed slightly. Shouldn't it be a heavenly law? 2 arcane annihilation cultivators came quickly. After seeing Zi Chen on the peak, one of them said coldly, "Don't let him escape. Kill him." The 2 tapped their feet and soared into the air, attacking Zi Chen. Zi Chen also snorted coldly. "You guys came quite quickly." A stream of light flew out and went straight for the 2. Poof! Poof! As these 2 voices rang out, the 2 people who had just reached the peak of the mountain fell down once again. They were dead. The 2 youths who were talking in the dark were completely stunned when they saw this scene. What's going on? The 2 looked at each other and saw confusion in each other's eyes. Zi Chen stood on the peak. A wind blew past, and his robes fluttered in the wind. His cold gaze was looking into the distance. Someone was flying over. That's more like it. The one flying over was a heavenly law. The other party glanced at the corpses on the ground, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Die. He swooped down, heading straight for Zi Chen. Zi Chen's body glowed with golden light as he activated his immortal golden body and punched forward. Boom! The powerful shockwave sent Zi Chen flying and falling from the mountain peak. Shoo! Whoosh! In the sky, streams of light overflowed like arrows, falling towards Zi Chen at the foot of the mountain. Boom! After landing on the ground, Zi Chen punched out as he retreated. Following a series of explosions, the attacks disappeared. Die! The heavenly law once again descended from high above and sent a palm strike towards Zi Chen's face. Zi Chen's eyes were cold as he said, "I'll send you on your way." Buzz! The stone sword appeared, and the runes on it lit up as it flew straight for heavenly law. Heaven-severing technique. At such a close distance, heavenly law did not expect Zi Chen to have such a terrifying attack. He had no time to dodge. Puff! The rainbow light swept past heavenly law's body. He was split into 2 and scattered on the ground. With a wave of his hand, Zi Chen recalled his opponent's heavenly law crystal and spirit ring. Then he sneered. It seems that this heaven-severing technique is prepared for those in the heavenly law realm. He flew towards the 2 people from before and took away the spoils of war. The two youths in the dark looked at each other once again. Ziqin put away the spoils of war. Just as he raised his head, his expression suddenly changed. Several figures appeared in front of him, all of them leaping into the air. How is this possible? Ziqin's expression changed drastically. He was in disbelief. He had been teleported several times, but he could not even tell where he was. How could they find him? Moreover, there were so many of them at once. There was no time for him to continue thinking. The 5 heavenly law had already launched an attack on him. Ziqin had no choice but to flee. The 5 of them separated in the sky and surrounded Ziqin. Seeing this, Ziqin had no choice but to rush towards one of them. "You're courting death." The other party was furious and punched downwards. Ziqin dodged and went straight for the other party. Swoosh! The heavenly law's figure descended, wanting to stop Ziqin. Heaven severing technique. Right at this moment, Ziqin attacked again. A rainbow light streaked past. The heavenly law only felt his vision blur before he lost consciousness. The current Ziqin could no longer care about collecting the spoils of war and wanted to continue fleeing. In the sky, a powerful aura suddenly descended, like the pressure of the 9 heavens. Ziqin had no choice but to take out the world annihilation bell. Clang! With a loud sound, golden ripples spread out, resisting the pressure from the sky. Ziqin raised his head and looked at the 4 people in the sky. Replica World Annihilation Bell. You're from the Dharma spirit race? In the sky, a heavenly law suddenly spoke. Ziqin gritted his teeth and said, "Cut the crap, just attack!" The other party snorted coldly again. "In that case, your Dharma spirit race is going to interfere this time." Ziqin was stunned and said, "What do you mean? Playing dumb in front of me?" The other party sneered and walked forward step by step. At the same time, he coordinated with the other 3 people to pressure Ziqin. Ziqin was stunned and said, "Do you guys know me?" The moment the 4 people heard, they all sneered. "I don't care which young master of the Dharma spirit race you are. Standing here today, you're our enemy." Only then did Ziqin react and hurriedly said, "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. You guys don't know me. I don't know you guys either." "In that case, you guys aren't here to kill me either?" "Kill you," the heavenly law in the sky said indifferently. "From the looks of it, it's you who killed many of our people." Ziqin continued, "Then it's really a misunderstanding. I was cultivating here when someone suddenly came to kill me. I thought it was the pursuers." The 4 people in the sky were stunned. The heavenly law said, "You're not here for this lost world." Ziqin said, "What lost world? I've never even heard of it." "Everyone, looks like this is really a misunderstanding. How about this? You guys continue looking for that whatever place. I'll leave right away and not disturb you guys." With that, Ziqin began to retreat. We don't care if you're really stupid or pretending to be stupid. Since you know this secret, then die." With that said, the 4 people attacked at the same time. After witnessing Ziqin's killing methods, they naturally would not underestimate Ziqin. Ziqin had no choice but to use the world annihilation bell to protect himself and then wait for an opportunity to attack. "Everyone, this is really a misunderstanding. Let's stop, okay?" Ziqin, who was hiding under the light of the world annihilation bell, shouted repeatedly, "Die!" This was the response of the 4 people. Their attacks fell from the sky like a torrent. Under such circumstances, Ziqin could only passively defend. "This is troublesome. I thought they were the pursuers." Ziqin looked vexed. "I was wondering why those 2 idiots were only at the Dharma annihilation realm. Can't they ask clearly before attacking?" Ziqin's face was full of bad luck. Great, now he couldn't even run. "Damn it, let's kill one first." Ziqin tapped his foot and rushed towards one of the heavenly Dharma realm with the bell. Seeing this, the other party retreated in the air. "Go to hell." A stream of light moved forward. It was the slaughter spirit. The other party's expression changed drastically. He blocked with both hands, and light appeared in front of him. Buzz! The slaughter spirit landed on the defense, but did not break through. The heavenly Dharma realm was obviously stunned. Be careful! At this moment, his companion reminded him. It was too late. Zi Chen's heaven severing technique had already arrived in front of him. Swish! It directly swept past the other party's body. So strong? Looking at the heavenly Dharma realm who fell to the ground, Zi Chen was also stunned. He thought that it would take 2 moves to kill him. Could it be that my heaven severing technique has improved a lot in the past few days? Zi Chen looked at the stone sword in his hand. Or could it be that its power has increased? Now it's so easy to kill a heavenly Dharma realm. Be careful! Suddenly, a young and tender voice sounded. Zi Chen sensed that there was something abnormal behind him. Before he could turn around, an attack landed on his body. Boom! A tyrannical force erupted from his back. Zi Chen coughed up blood and moved forward. The sound of bones shattering came from his body. Zi Chen, who landed on the ground, rolled a few more times before looking at the person who ambushed him. This was the 5th person on the scene. The other party's aura was even stronger than the other 4. You're still not dead. The other party also had a look of surprise. I, a dignified 2nd level Heaven Dharma realm, can't even kill you, a mere law annihilation? Zi Chen gritted his teeth and stood up. But before he could speak, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the pale Zi Chen cursed. You're a dignified 2nd level Heaven Dharma realm, yet you still sneak attack. Do you have any shame? Although he did not die, he was seriously injured. Killing so many of us, I don't care what your background is. You must die today. A 2nd level Heaven Dharma, a palm landed. Zi Chen summoned the World Annihilation Bell in front. The palm print landed on the World Annihilation Bell. With a loud bang, the World Annihilation Bell knocked into Zi Chen and flew backward. When the other 3 saw the situation, they pounced forward like hungry wolves, without the slightest bit of dignity and face of a powerhouse. When Zi Chen landed on the ground, several more bloody wounds appeared on his body. This kid has such a powerful body. A Heaven Dharma's face revealed a look of shock. His attack previously should have chopped Zi Chen in half at the waist. He did not expect that it only left a bloody wound. But even so, facing everyone's besiegement, Zi Chen's condition also became worse and worse. What to do? Do we just watch him get killed? Why don't I go find the Patriarch? The Patriarch is injured and isn't these people's match at all. Then what to do? The 2 people's voices were filled with anxiety. Puark! Zi Chen was sent flying once more, coughing blood repeatedly. These 4 people joined forces to deal with Zi Chen alone. Zi Chen was no match for them at all. Kid, I'll send you on your way. A 2nd level Heaven Dharma approached and punched Zi Chen's forehead. Zi Chen's body rolled a few times, and the stone sword in his hand almost fell out of his hand. He gritted his teeth and stood up, holding the stone sword tightly. Even if I die, I will drag one down with me. His eyes were filled with madness. The stone sword exerted force again. At this moment, a ripple suddenly appeared in front of him. Following that, a light seal broke through the ripple and came out. This light seal looked like a word. The word slash. This is the word slash. During this time there were exclamations. Why would the word slash appear? This light seal flew directly towards Zi Chen and then entered the stone sword. Buzz! The stone sword began to tremble, and a powerful aura was released. At this moment, the stone sword seemed to be about to leave his hand. Zi Chen immediately waved his hand to slash. It was still the heaven slashing technique. Puark, a 1st level Heaven Dharma, next to him was directly split into 2. and the light seal consumed less than 1/10 of its power. Zi-chan waved his hand and slashed again. He raised his hand and the sword fell. 3 consecutive slashes. Each slash was a heaven-slashing technique. The light seal exhausted its power and disappeared from the stone sword. The remaining 3 people fell to the ground, one after another, including that second level heaven dharma. Zi-chan also exhausted his strength. His vision turned black and he fell straight down. Chapter 53:31. What the hell is going on? We don't know either. Why did the severed technique fly out? What's going on with him? We don't know either. After we went out, we saw him meditating outside. Zi-chan vaguely heard such a conversation. Then his consciousness fell into a blur again. The severed technique is our foundation. Why would it come out to save an outsider? We don't know either, but the method he used seems to be very similar to the severed technique. That's impossible. Every immortal treasure is unique. How can an outsider control it? Forget it, his injuries are not light. Let's help him heal first. After an unknown period of time, Zi-chan opened his eyes. His spiritual sense was the first to recover, and he noticed a different aura of heaven and earth. Ah, you're awake. I'll call the patriarch right away. A tender voice sounded. It was this voice that reminded him to be careful. Zi-chan turned his head and saw a travel-worn figure. He stretched his muscles and bones. The injuries he suffered back then were mostly healed. Is this the lost place? He remembered the conversation with those people during the battle. At the critical moment, something flew out and saved him. It was a light seal. The way it operated was very similar to his mountain-cutting technique. This was also the key to killing his enemies. Before Zi-chan could think about it carefully, a group of people walked in. The leader was a burly man with a beard. His face was even paler than Zi-chan, who had just woken up. It was as if he had not recovered from his serious injuries. After these people came in, they looked at Zi-chan curiously, as if they were looking at a rare breed. Seeing this, Zi-chan immediately cupped his fists at the crowd. I'm Zi-chan. Thank you for saving me. Everyone did not speak, still looking at Zi-chan. A young man popped his head out and said, Hero, this is our patriarch. The one who saved you is the severed technique. The patriarch turned his head and glanced at the young man with a sharp gaze. The young man stuck out his tongue and quickly retracted his head. Zi-chan said again, No matter what, I still have to thank everyone. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to survive. The patriarch asked, Do you know those people? Zi-chan shook his head. I don't know him. The patriarch asked again, Why did they fight? I heard that you are from the Soul Law Alliance. Zi-chan smiled bitterly. I'm considered a member of the Mage Spirit Alliance. As for why we started fighting, it's all a misunderstanding. Before I came here, I was hunted down by my enemies. After several teleportations, I somehow ended up here. When I suddenly saw the murderous aura of someone approaching, I thought it was an enemy. Zi-chan shrugged. That's why they started fighting. The content was not much different from what the 2 youths had said. The patriarch nodded. The others nodded silently, agreeing with Zi-chan's statement. The atmosphere fell silent. Zi-chan asked, I heard those people say that they were looking for a place called the Lost Land. Could it be here? Yes, their purpose is here. You blocked a disaster for us, so we should thank you. The patriarch said sincerely, If it weren't for you, we would have been in danger this time. The patriarch cupped his fists at Zi-chan. The people behind him also followed suit. Zi-chan hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, no, no. We're actually even. After all, those people didn't intend to let me go. Looking at Zi-chan's calm expression, the patriarch asked with some doubt, Aren't you curious why the Lost Land is here? Zi-chan said, What does the Lost Land mean? As soon as the sentence came out, everyone was stunned. You don't know? Zichen shook his head. This is the first time I've heard of it. Everyone's eyes became more and more strange. I heard from Long Zai that the technique you used seemed to be very special. Where did you learn it? The patriarch suddenly asked this question. Zichen was actually very curious about that light seal. At this moment, since the patriarch was talking about this topic, he did not hide it. It's from my hometown. Where is your hometown? Everyone was curious. Zichen pointed at his feet, a very far place. I broke through the boundary and came here. When everyone heard this, their expressions changed, and some of the youths even exclaimed in surprise. To them, the other world was extremely far away. Here, there were many people who had never left the severed world. Zichen said, "What exactly is that light seal that saved me before? It seems to be very compatible with my attack. That is the foundation of our existence here." The patriarch said, "It is also the foundation of the existence of the lost land." The patriarch turned sideways and motioned for Zichen to come out and talk. The crowd opened up a path and Zichen walked out. The patriarch said, "Do you feel anything?" Zichen released his soul power and sensed the abnormalities between heaven and earth. After a while he said, "It seems that the aura of heaven and earth is different." The patriarch said, "Yes, because this is the aura before the chaos." "What do you mean?" Zichen was puzzled. The so-called lost land is a place that was accidentally lost during the chaos. The patriarch pointed around. Everything here came from the moment before the chaos, including the spiritual power of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth. Zichen was shocked when he heard this. In other words, this is the immortal spell world from back then? The patriarch smiled bitterly. It's rare that someone still remembers this name. Zichen smiled. In that case, you are all natives. The patriarch looked at this insensitive young man and could not help but shake his head. It seems that you really don't know the meaning of the lost land. The people around him had the same expression. This young man was indeed a hothead who knew nothing at all. Other than the spiritual power of heaven and earth being slightly different, I really can't see any difference between this place and the pure land. Zichen said truthfully. The patriarch smiled and said, "Then I'll broaden your horizons today." The patriarch pointed into the distance and said, "Let's talk as we walk." This time the others did not follow, only Zichen and the patriarch. They looked at the backs of the two, and their expressions became complicated. There was anticipation, apprehension, and most of all worry. The so-called lost land is the immortal spell world before the chaos. This place still retains the aura of heaven and earth from back then. Although the laws of heaven and earth are no longer complete, there are still remnants. The patriarch turned to look at Zichen. "Do you know what this means?" Zichen shook his head. The patriarch said, "This means that the origin of heaven and earth still exists." Zichen's expression changed. No matter when, the origin of heaven and earth was extremely precious. The patriarch continued, "It is said that the formation of a pure land means the fall of an immortal, but this is only a legend. However, all the remaining lost lands in the world have the origin of heaven and earth from before the chaos, as well as an immortal treasure that suppresses the origin." Zichen's expression changed again. "In that case, those people are looking for this place for that immortal treasure." The patriarch nodded. "That's right." The patriarch pointed forward. "This is that immortal treasure." Zichen looked up and saw a blue stone wall in front of him. This stone wall looked very ordinary, but what was truly extraordinary was the word carved in the middle of the stone wall. It was the word /. It was drawn with his fingers, but every stroke contained the sharp might of a saber or sword. At first glance, Zichen felt that countless swords appeared in front of him. They crisscrossed and cold light shot out in all directions. Buzz! In the next moment, a blurry figure suddenly appeared among the countless swords. He seemed to be laughing, demonstrating something to the world. Buzz! In the next moment, a rainbow light broke through the sky. That was the mountain slashing technique, just like the scene back then. Gushan! Zichen exclaimed. What did you say? The patriarch's voice alerted Zichen. Zichen looked at the word slash again, and it had returned to normal. However, his mood couldn't calm down for a long time. After being here for so long, he finally found the traces left by Gushan. This proved that Gushan lived here in the past. Now it seemed that it was not a coincidence that the word slash suddenly saved him. It was because he sensed a familiar aura. What did you find? The patriarch looked at Zichen's changing expression and couldn't help but ask. Zichen said, Who left this thing? The patriarch shook his head and said, We don't know. It has always been there. Zichen said, If I'm not wrong, the person who left this word and the spell are the same person. What? This time, it was the patriarch's turn to be shocked. Then he sighed. No wonder the word slash appeared to save you. Zichen looked at the patriarch and said, Patriarch, may I know why you've told me such a shocking secret? What do you mean? The patriarch looked at Zichen. Zichen smiled slightly and said, Whether it's the source of heaven and earth or this immortal treasure, they're the foundation of the lost place. Patriarch, you told me everything as soon as you came, so you naturally have a purpose. Or is it a test? To see if I have the heart to snatch it? If so, you can kill me with the immortal treasure. The patriarch smiled bitterly and said, If it was before, it would be possible, but in my current state, it's impossible. The patriarch chose to save Zichen, so he was naturally aware of his combat strength. Killing a heavenly law with one sword strike, such combat strength, even with the help of the immortal treasure, he had no confidence in killing the enemy. Not to mention, the immortal treasure chose to save him. Actually, I'm just taking a gamble, because we're already at the end of the line. The patriarch said, I'm seriously injured, and I can barely exert the combat strength of the first layer of heavenly law. If those people come again, we won't be able to protect this place. At this point, the patriarch looked at Zichen, and the reason why I told you the secret of the lost place is because I want to make a deal with you. Everything here belongs to you, and you give our clansmen a place to live. Why me? Zichen asked. Because the immortal treasure took the initiative to save you. This was the patriarch's explanation. In fact, it was also a helpless choice after having no way out. Chapter 5332. Zichen shook his head and said, It's not that I don't want to help, but there's nothing I can do. You've seen my current realm. I'm only at the Dharma extermination realm, and since they could send so many heavenly Dharma last time, there will only be more next time. Zichen spread his hands helplessly. A level 2 heavenly Dharma almost took my life. If their level is higher, I can't do anything. Who knows? There might even be immortal Dharma holding down the fort. The patriarch said, The reason why the exiled grounds are so mysterious is because immortal treasures have spirits. They can sense danger and avoid calamities in advance. Zichen was a little puzzled. Once we were targeted by an immortal Dharma. The immortal treasure sensed it in advance and brought us away. The patriarch said, This situation has happened many times. Therefore, you don't have to worry about immortal Dharma. You just have to resist the heavenly Dharma realm. As far as we know, if the danger is only at the heavenly Dharma realm, the immortal treasure will not take action. It doesn't matter even if you can't resist the danger. Just help us find a safe place to stay. After that, everything here will be yours. Zichen was still puzzled. This request was not high, and he believed that many people could do it. Even those people back then could easily do it. Even the patriarch himself could do it. After all, he was a heavenly Dharma. It was easy for such an existence to find a pure land. But immediately after, the patriarch revealed a shocking secret. Zichen was shocked when he heard it. The most precious thing in the exiled grounds was not immortal treasures, but the world origins before the chaos. Once an immortal Dharma was refined, there was a chance of advancing to the immortal spirit realm. Be it immortal Dharma or immortal spirit, they were extremely far away realms for Zichen. At that moment, Zichen's goal was only to become a heavenly Dharma. But from the patriarch's words, Zichen guessed that there must be an immortal Dharma behind those people. It was just that the other party did not dare to approach this place rashly. Then the patriarch explained why he did not make a deal with those people. That was because the natives of the exiled grounds would have some aura from before the chaos. After killing and refining them, it could increase the success rate of an immortal Dharma advancing to the immortal spirit realm. Therefore, once others got their hands on them, everyone would die. Zichen suddenly understood. However, he did not immediately agree to the clan leader's request because the promise was too great. However, he also said that he would do his best to help everyone. If there's an opportunity, I'll help you for free. Since this place is related to you, you might be able to gain some enlightenment here. The clan leader did not force the issue and left in advance. Zichen stood in front of the stone wall and looked at the word behead. Countless years ago, Gushan must have stood here and carved this character with his finger. It was just a single word, but it actually retained a part of the most primitive laws of heaven and earth, which showed how powerful Gushan was. Zichen stretched out his hand and touched the character. Immediately, a sharp aura surged toward them. Back then, Gushan had left behind a wisp of his consciousness and taught Zichen the mountain chopping technique. After that, Zichen learned the heaven severing technique in the spellbreaker realm. Above heaven severing was immortal severing. Zichen had initially guessed that Gushan had created the last two moves after coming to the immortal techniques world. But when he came here and saw the word slash, he realized that it was not just that. There was also the word slash. Could it be that Gushan had been creating his own combat techniques along the way? Zichen was slightly absent-minded. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in his palm. The word slash in front of him seemed to have sensed something and began to emit light. It was not strong, but very gentle and enveloped Zichen. A hearty laugh suddenly sounded. Zichen saw a person standing in front of him. Gushan. Zichen was shocked, then rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Gushan smiled. It's me. It's really you. Zichen was completely shocked. You, he was very excited, but he did not know what to say. It's you. Gushan opened his mouth and said with a smile, I knew it must be you. You're finally here. Zichen became more and more excited. Yes, it's me. Senior, do you still remember the mountain chopping technique? Back then, you said that you would wait for me in the immortal techniques world. Mountain chopping technique? Gushan was slightly startled, then carefully looked at Zichen. So it's not you. Zichen looked at Gushan in confusion. Gushan sighed. It seems that you made a different choice after all. Zichen was even more confused. Senior, did you forget that I mastered the mountain chopping technique with the flowing chopping blade? Gushan nodded. There was indeed a spiritual sense left in the flowing chopping blade to protect the spiritual realm. Then he looked at Zichen and smiled. So that's why. Zichen said, Senior, why are you here? What happened in the immortal spell realm? Why did it become like this? Gushan said, I'm still just a spiritual body with the memories of the main body. As for the immortal spell realm, there was a great turmoil in the past, and it finally became like this. What's the source of the turmoil? Zichen asked. Gods. Gods. Zichen was startled. He had never heard of this word. Are there really gods in this world? Gushan nodded. They're the source of the turmoil. Seeing that Zichen was about to ask more, Gushan said, I'm just a spiritual body, so I don't know much. It's just a coincidence that I was left here back then. Zichen's heart suddenly moved. Senior, have you been protecting this place all these years? You can say that. Gushan said, "Once I sense a threat, I'll take them away." Gushan's avatar looked at Zichen. "You've mastered the mountain chopping technique, so it'll be easy for you to comprehend this severing technique. And I believe that this severing technique will be even more powerful in your hands." Zichen nodded, then sat down cross-legged to comprehend. Gushan's avatar stood at the side. At this moment, if there were outsiders present, they would find that Zichen was standing there, motionless. But this was just a shell. As for the soul, it was gone. In Zichen's mind, the shadows of swords and sabers appeared. Back then, the mountain chopping technique was displayed with the flowing chopping blade. Now, both swords and sabers could be used. Combined with Zichen's comprehension of the mountain chopping technique and the heaven chopping technique, he soon discovered the mystery of the severing technique. It was not a new offensive technique, but an auxiliary technique that was close to violence. It could increase the power of the original attack by several times. Recalling the severing technique, Zichen also outlined a picture in his mind. The next moment, his soul power erupted, forming a severing character in front of him. "Your comprehension is really good," Gushan's avatar exclaimed. "You've discovered the mystery in such a short time." Zichen also opened his eyes at this moment. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. "So it's the condensation of soul power. No wonder it's so powerful." This was the combination of soul power and spirit power. "Your comprehension is good, and your soul power is even better," Gushan said. "With such a good soul power, you should put more effort into it. In this world, soul power is very important. Back then, my main body spent a long time to combine the two powers and burst out the strongest attack." Zichen's soul power was not weak to begin with. After refining the soul power of heaven and earth, it became very powerful. All this time, he had wanted to maximize his advantages to the fullest. Unfortunately, he had never had the time to comprehend it. Perhaps this was a rare opportunity. Zichen opened his eyes and looked at the stone wall in front of him. There was confusion in his eyes. Was it a dream just now? But in the next moment, his soul power flowed and turned into a severing technique in front of him. Is it real? Zichen looked forward. Is Senior's spiritual sense really here? Zichen immediately released his soul power and landed on the stone wall, trying to communicate with Gushan's spiritual sense again. But there was no response. Zichen cupped his fists at the stone wall, then turned and left. When he returned, everyone still welcomed him warmly. It was just that everyone's face was filled with unconcealable worry. Zichen knew what they were worried about. The patriarch arranged a residence for Zichen. After Zichen returned to his residence, he began to cultivate. At the moment, his realm was too low. Even if he wanted to help everyone, he was powerless. In the blink of an eye, another 5 days passed. Zichen had been cultivating, and no one came to disturb him during this period. On the 7th day, the patriarch came to find Zichen. "They're here again and are searching nearby." Zichen followed the patriarch out and saw them at the border of the severed world. This time there were 5 people. 2 of them are at the 2nd level of heaven law, and the remaining 3 are at the 1st level. The patriarch said with a solemn expression. At this moment, the 2 sides were only a few thousand feet apart, but they did not hear the patriarch's words. Zichen furrowed his brows. The patriarch said, "Why don't the 2 of us join forces and try to kill them?" Zichen thought for a moment and said, "How long will it take for them to find this place?" "I can't say for sure. It may be a few days, or a dozen days, or even longer." Zichen said, "Let's go back first." According to the patriarch's current realm, he was no longer a match for Zichen, so he naturally listened to Zichen. After the 2 returned, Zichen went to the stone wall. He wanted to communicate with Gushan again. His consciousness sank, and Zichen saw Gushan again. Gushan's spiritual sense looked at Zichen. "Are you here for those people?" Zichen nodded and said, I want to help them. Gushan asked how. Zichen said, Senior, help me stall for time. After I break through, I'll naturally have a way to deal with them. Okay. Gushan nodded and said, but only for 3 months at most. Zichen said, then I'll try my best. Zichan went back and told the patriarch to pay close attention to the outside world and not disturb him unless necessary. After that, Zichan began to refine resources at full speed for cultivation. Because he had killed a few Heaven Law Realm experts, Zichen could refine Heaven Law crystals, which could greatly increase his cultivation speed. Another 10 days later, Zichen successfully broke through and reached the 9th level of Annihilation Realm. Then, he swallowed the 2 pills without hesitation. He wanted to break through in one go. Time passed, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The people outside were about to find this place as they continued to search. Found it. Suddenly, a cry of surprise sounded. In the next moment, a Heaven Law Realm expert pointed at the void and a light seal fell there. Buzz. Chapter 5333. In this empty land, buildings suddenly appeared one after another. The enchantment of the Lost Grounds was forcefully broken. The Lost Grounds had appeared. For a moment, screams were heard as the residents of the Lost Grounds noticed the abnormality. When the 5 heavenly laws saw this, they all sneered. After searching for you for so long, I've finally found you. A 2nd degree Heavenly Law Realm Warrior walked forward. The few people beside him were also very excited. According to the original agreement, after finding the Lost Grounds, the immortal treasures inside would belong to them. At this moment, everyone in the Lost Grounds had come out. They gathered together and protected the children in the middle. Although their eyes were cold, their bodies were trembling. Unlike the other Pure Lands, in this severed world, most of the people were ordinary people without any cultivation. At this moment, facing everyone, it seemed that they would only be slaughtered. And for so many years, this was the first time their Lost Grounds had been breached. The people who had never seen such a scene were naturally afraid. The clan leader stood at the front, his face pale. Good. Since everyone is here, let's kill them all together and save us the trouble of finding them one by one. The 2nd level Heavenly Law threw out a few jade bottles. Seal their souls in here. The other 4 immediately went forward and took them, then sneered. The children were so frightened that they cried, and for a moment there were wails. The others were in despair, their bodies trembling. Some were holding short swords, some were holding iron weapons, and some were holding wooden sticks, waiting for death to approach. This was an unequal battle. At this moment, there was suddenly a tyrannical aura coming from a building. Oh! The 5 of them stopped and looked in front of them in surprise. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged crazily and then gathered in a certain place. Did someone break through? The 2nd level Heavenly Law laughed disdainfully. Unfortunately, he only advanced to the 1st level of Heavenly Law. He's just sending himself to death. Go, drag him out and seal his soul alone. After all, he's a big deal. Immediately, a 1st level Heavenly Law flew forward. To deal with a mere existence who had just broken through, it was not difficult for the people present, so any one of them could take him down. As for the 2nd level Heavenly Law, he looked at the clan leader. I'll seal his soul. The 3 of you go kill the others. Chi. The exiled grounds suddenly lit up with a beam of light. It was like a bolt of lightning that suddenly appeared, heading straight for the Heaven Dharma realm. Such an unforeseen event caused the other party's expression to change. With a loud shout, he raised his defenses. How dare you launch a sneak attack when you've just broken through? You're courting death. The other party gritted his teeth and shouted, his face full of anger. The light instantly approached. It was a small sword. Pooh! The defense of the Heavenly Law realm was instantly blocked. Heavenly Law's eyes widened in disbelief as his body, crashed to the ground. Such a scene caused the expressions of the remaining 4 to change as they raised their heads to look ahead. "Who is it? Come out." That second-degree realm practitioner's expression was extremely grave as his gaze started to sweep around the surroundings, using his sole power to search. Perhaps there were other experts in the dark. The remaining 3 people approached him one after another, and then became alert. To be able to instantly kill a first-level Heaven Law expert, it was enough to show how powerful the other party was. Zichen walked over from afar. Since he had just broken through, his aura was still unstable. Air currents kept appearing around him, causing his robes to flutter. "You shouldn't have come," an indifferent voice sounded. When the 4 of them saw Zichen, their faces were filled with disbelief. "It's you?" Zichen continued to walk forward, his eyes gradually turning cold. When the rest of the people in the exiled grounds saw Zichen, they were all extremely agitated. The children who were previously frightened were even prepared to cry out in alarm. To their knowledge, Zichen was a hero who had saved them. The clan leader used a sharp gaze to stop all of this. He looked at Zichen. Zichen said, "Bring everyone back." The clan leader nodded and signaled for everyone to quickly retreat. There was bound to be a huge battle here. Just the aftermath of a battle between Heaven Law Realm experts was something they could not withstand. As for whether Zichen alone was a match for these 4 people, he was not worried at all. Back then, when Zichen had not broken through, he was already able to kill a first-degree realm practitioner. Now that he had become a Heaven Law expert, he believed that his battle strength would only be stronger. Acting all mysterious, "Kill him!" The second-degree realm practitioner waved his hand. "I don't believe that a mere first-degree realm practitioner like you can go against the heavens." The other 3 immediately charged towards Zichen. 2 first-degree realm practitioners and 1 second-degree realm practitioner. As for the second-degree realm practitioner who seemed to be the leader, he remained standing there. The aura around the 3 of them surged violently. They directly used their full strength. "Die!" Zichen's indifferent voice rang, like a curse from the Grim Reaper. His eyes were only fixed on the second-degree realm practitioner in the air. As for the 2 first-degree realm practitioners, he didn't even bother to look at them. Within the same realm, he was not afraid of anyone. Uft, uft. The massacre spirit turned into a ray of light and flashed beside the 2 of them. Following that, the 2 of them landed on the ground. Dead. Zichen took out the stone sword and slashed forward. His target was the second-degree realm. Wow! A sharp ray shot up into the sky. Uft. Without any surprise, the second-degree realm practitioner's body was directly split into 2. When the second-degree realm leader saw this scene, his face was filled with shock. Was this really someone who had just entered the Heavenly Law Realm? He turned and ran. Zichen looked at the other party's fleeing figure and snorted coldly. Following that, a slash word gathered in front of him. Then it merged into the stone sword. The stone sword exploded with a glaring ray, and its aura rose sharply. Lines of divine patterns appeared on the surface. Slash the heavens! The stone sword slashed down, and with the slash word, a glaring sword mark appeared in the sky. With Zichen as the starting point, the second-degree realm as the ending point. Uft! It completely pierced through. At this moment, the clan leader led everyone and retreated a short distance before the battle ended. All of them stood there in a daze, their eyes filled with disbelief. Zichen looked at the direction of the stone wall. Uft! Uft! The surrounding airflow started to flow again. The lost grounds which had just appeared was once again hidden in the dark. With the crisis averted, everyone gathered around. The children looked at Zichen with admiration. Zichen smiled at everyone. He really couldn't enjoy this kind of enthusiasm. After greeting the clan leader, he went to the stone wall. Gu Shan's doppelganger told Ziqin that every time he brought everyone out, the consumption was huge and there were some special conditions. So only when the immortal technique appeared he could take action. This actually explained why he didn't stop the array when he saw it shatter. If I bring them out of here, what will happen? Ziqin suddenly asked. They will die. Gushan said. Ziqin was stunned. Why? Because the immortal technique has already locked this area. Once someone tries to escape, they will naturally die. That's because every native has more or less the aura from before the upheaval. Gu Shan's doppelganger said, the lost grounds are not easy to find, and every time one is found, it is something that the immortal technique must obtain. Then what should we do? If that was the case, he couldn't leave by himself. It's very simple. Wait for the immortal technique to appear. Once he appears, I can mobilize a part of the heavenly law and take all of you away. When we reach a safe area, what you want to do is up to you. Hearing this, Ziqin smiled bitterly. What ability do I have to force an immortal technique to appear? It should be known that he had just reached the heavenly law realm. He thought that when he reached this realm he could fly freely, but he didn't expect to encounter an immortal technique. For the current Ziqin, this was definitely an unreachable existence. You'd better deal with those corpses first. If they are marked in advance, it will be troublesome. Under the reminder of Gu Shan's spiritual sense, Ziqin reacted and quickly turned back. The feeling of flying once again made him feel much better. Don't touch these corpses. Be careful not to be contaminated with their aura. Some people were looking at the corpses. Ziqin saw this and quickly reminded them. The clan leader also waved his hand and said, "Go back and cultivate." Everyone dispersed, but there were some who were reluctant to leave. They naturally knew what realm the dead people were in and what value they had. Because they stayed in the severed grounds, their corpses were intact. After Ziqin put them away one by one, he waved his hand and cleaned up all the bloodstains on the ground. Then he took the corpses and left the severed grounds. Outside, Ziqin took out the corpses. Under the support of the wasteland's laws, they turned into bones. Then, Ziqin used his own strength to crush these bones, leaving no traces. Ziqin put away the remaining heavenly law crystals, including their interspatial rings. After returning, Ziqin went to the stone wall again. Next, he would combine his own strength and create a simple combat technique that belonged to him. He had already seen the power of the severing word art. Overlaying the severing heaven technique, its power increased by at least 3 times. Ziqin had a huge advantage in terms of soul power. It was obviously not easy to create his own combat technique. However, he could combine his original combat technique and integrate his soul power into it, greatly increasing its original power. For example, the spirit of massacre and the world annihilation bell. In the following time, Ziqin stayed by the stone wall and studied the offensive techniques. Sometimes he would communicate with Gu Shan's doppelganger. Even though the other party was just a spiritual body, his knowledge was much wider than Ziqin. Sometimes he would give some suggestions to Ziqin. The clan leader and the rest did not know about the existence of Gu Shan's doppelganger. Another 10 days passed. A second wave of people appeared here. Among them, the highest realm was only at the 2nd degree realm. This time, Ziqin took the initiative to kill and get rid of everyone. Then Ziqin followed Gu Shan's doppelganger's instructions and walked around. As expected, he met other people. Immortal techniques could only sense a rough area and were not accurate. Therefore, some people with lower realms were needed to find an accurate direction. Ziqin went out for 5 days and cleaned up a large area before returning. When he returned, Ziqin was surprised to find that the position of the entrance had changed. The clan leader told Ziqin that the severed grounds had always been moving, but it was relatively slow. Chapter 5334. There was an old man standing on the mountain peak. He looked forward with a gloomy expression. There was no aura released from his body, but the surrounding space was twisting involuntarily. This was caused by his power being too strong. "Master!" A young man flew over and stood behind the old man. The old man said without turning his head, "In the past 2 months, we have lost more than 30 heavenly laws." "Huh." The young man was taken aback. "Last time, we set up a trap and injured that person. Could it be that he has recovered from his injuries?" The old man shook his head and said, "I have personally investigated. It is impossible for his injuries to recover so quickly. Perhaps there are other powerhouses in the exiled grounds. Go and investigate personally and see what is going on." "Should I call senior brother back?" "Not for the time being. This matter is of great importance. Once the news is leaked and other immortal techniques are attracted, we will be in big trouble." "Yes." The young man flew into the distance. At this moment, Ziqin had reaped the life of the last heavenly law. These people clearly had immortal techniques behind them, but the heavenly laws they sent out were only at stage 2. This made Ziqin a little puzzled, but it was also a good thing for him. If their realm was higher, it would be difficult for him to deal with them. His powerful soul power extended out, and the range had already exceeded 30,000 feet. Ziqin's expression changed slightly. In his perception, a young man appeared. In this place, everyone appeared in groups of 3 to 5. It was extremely rare to see someone acting alone like the other party. As his perception fell, Ziqin actually sensed a trace of dangerous aura from the other party, so he immediately changed direction. During this time, his soul power still fell on the other party, sensing the young man's movements. After refining that heaven and earth soul power, Ziqin's own soul power had undergone a qualitative change. At the current realm of heavenly laws, the highest range that their soul power could extend was only 100,000 feet. Ziqin's range was more than 3 times that of theirs. Therefore, he could see the young man's movements. The other party came to the place where Ziqin was previously. When he saw the bones on the ground, his eyes immediately became sharp. Marcus's eyes swept around like cold lightning with killing intent. Who did this? He released his soul power, but didn't sense anything out of the ordinary. At this moment, Ziqin was 30,000 feet away from him. When he heard this roar, he knew that the 2 of them were in cahoots. Next, Ziqin walked in the opposite direction. He wanted to clean up all the people here. After killing for so long, the number of heavenly laws that had died was already high. He did not believe that the other party would have endless heavenly laws by his side. Marcus found that no matter where he went, he was always 1 step behind. It was as if someone had been secretly monitoring him. Everything had been taken care of before he arrived. 10 days later, Marcus withdrew. He gained nothing. Another dozen or so heavenly laws died. Ziqin also turned back. His recent battles had given him a new idea of how to use his soul power. After returning, Ziqin went to the stone wall. After a brief conversation with Gushan's avatar, he began to comprehend soul power. Marcus turned back and met his master at the peak of the mountain. "Master, I suspect that there is a second powerhouse in the exiled grounds. His realm is at least above the 5th stage. The old man shook his head. "It's impossible for there to be someone above the 5th stage of the heavenly law realm. Once someone of this realm makes a move, I will definitely sense it." Marcus said, "But if it's the 4th stage, it's impossible to escape my perception. Call the others back first. We'll move together." When Marcus sent out the signal and everyone returned, they found that the number of people was less than 1/5 of the original number. There were only a dozen or so people left. This made the old man's expression extremely ugly. If he went to find someone now, it would be troublesome. He could only look at Marcus and exhort, "Be careful." Marcus nodded and set off with the last of his men. 3 days later, the patriarch came to the stone wall and told Ziqin that someone else had appeared outside. Chen stayed in front of the stone wall for an hour before leaving. Walking out of the ripples, Chen's soul power extended. There was a heavenly law 10,000 feet away. Just as Chen discovered the other party, that person also sensed Chen's aura and could not help but be stunned. Chen turned around and ran like a stream of light. Found one. This heavenly law shouted excitedly and then flew over in the air. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his expression was incomparably excited. Chen did not stop and flew out for 100,000 feet. Quickly stop him. He definitely knows where the exiled grounds are. That heavenly law shouted excitedly. Because he could not catch up to Chen, he sent out a message. For a moment, the people in the vicinity all rushed over. Chen's soul power completely extended out at this moment, probing the abnormalities within 30,000 feet. There were 4 people in the second stage of the heavenly law realm, and the rest were all in the first stage. Suddenly, Chen's pupils constricted as he discovered that young man. The other party was shockingly a 4th stage heavenly law realm. It was just that, at this moment, he was the furthest away from Chen. Let's start here, then. Chen suddenly stopped and turned his head to look at the person chasing behind. Brat, why aren't you running anymore? The other party laughed coldly to no end and directly rushed toward Chen. At this moment, in his perception, the other companions were already on the way over. This kind of merit, he was naturally unwilling to share it with everyone. Hence, he attacked at full speed. Chen moved. He just extended 2 fingers and slashed forward. Chi! A streak of fierce light appeared from his fingertips, carrying extraordinary power, heading straight into the distance. In the sky, a silk line was drawn, leaving behind a trace that did not dissipate for a long time. Poo work! That extremely excited first-level heavenly law realm's body suddenly froze in the air, a pair of eyes also becoming wide saucers. A thought instantly flashed across his mind. Could it be that the people who died a few days ago were all killed by the other party? Unfortunately, he already had no time to think. The exiled land's rules descended, instantly taking away his flesh and life. The remaining skeleton scattered on the ground following that. Chen did not stop and walked straight towards the second heavenly law realm. That heavenly law realm sensed the abnormality and began to retreat. Whoa! The slaughter spirit appeared and went straight for the second first-level heavenly law realm. The other party had a look of horror on his face. Facing the incoming light, he propped up several defenses around his body. Poo work! But it was useless. Wherever the slaughter spirit passed, the defenses were all shattered. Following that, this first-level heavenly law realm was directly pierced through the head. Swoosh! The slaughter spirit turned back and circled around Chen. After accumulating power, it charged towards the third existence. All first-level heavenly law realm, retreat. Second-level heavenly law realm, kill. Marcus's voice rang out. After he sensed the abnormality, his face revealed deep shock. In his guess, to be able to kill so many heavenly law realm experts silently, it must be an existence above the 5th-level heavenly law realm. But he did not expect to encounter a first-level heavenly law realm expert. Could there be more than one? He flew forward quickly. The other second-level heavenly law realm experts also charged towards Chen. They were very close to Chen, so they were the first to arrive. At this moment, Chen took out the stone sword and activated the power of the stone sword. Chi! A heaven-cleaving technique shot towards the sky. A second-level heavenly law realm expert fell head-on. Following that, Chen attacked continuously. Several attacks streaked across the sky, and those second-level heavenly law realm experts who were not close to him all fell to the ground and died. During this period, the slaughter spirit was still reaping the lives of the first-level heavenly law realm experts. When Marcus reached the front and saw the scattered skeletons, He was completely dumbfounded. "It's you, so it's you." Zi Chen's response was another heaven-cleaving technique. But this time, he directly used the cleaving technique. The stone sword trembled as if it was about to fly out of his hand. Chi! Light shot up to the sky. It went straight for Marcus. Feeling the power of this sword, Marcus's face changed drastically. He clenched his fists and crossed them in front of him. A strong light appeared in front of him. Boom! The heaven-cleaving technique landed on the strong light, and the strong light instantly shattered. A powerful energy engulfed Marcus. Marcus's face was filled with shock as he kept retreating backwards. There was a difference of several realms between the two of them. He had not expected the other party's battle power to be so strong. Swoosh! Just at this moment, the slaughter spirit turned back, and like a ray of light, it charged towards Marcus. Marcus had no time to evade and hurriedly took out a weapon to block it. Crack! A clear sound rang, and the weapon in Marcus's hand had already been split into two. The slaughter spirit's energy had already been dissolved and returned to Zi Chen's side. Just as Marcus thought that the other party's attack had ended, a bell rang. Dang! The clear sound was mixed with an impact on the soul. His soul power started to vibrate as if it was about to collapse. A destructive ripple came from afar and swept towards Marcus. Suffering from the World Extermination Bell's energy impact, his body in the sky was already on the verge of collapse. Die! A cold voice suddenly sounded from Marcus's side. It was Zichen. He did not know when, but he had already arrived beside him. Golden light shone around his body as the immortal golden body was activated. He punched forward. This was the immortal fist, and it carried a vast power. At the same time, a ray of soul power flew out from Zi Chen's sea of consciousness and covered his fist. This caused the power of his punch to increase again. Boom! As if thunder had exploded in the sky, golden ripples fluctuated and spread out in all directions. Marcus's bones cracked, and his body was smashed into the distance. Blood splattered in midair. Die! Zi Chen stood in the air, his eyes extremely cold. The slaughter spirit moved forward again, this time to reap lives. Suddenly, Zi Chen's face changed drastically, and he immediately retreated. In a few flashes, he was 100 feet away. Suddenly, a huge palm appeared where he had been standing. It grabbed at the air, and even the air seemed to explode. Zi Chen's face changed drastically, and he exclaimed, "Immortal technique!" The slaughter spirit that was charging towards Marcus also turned back in an instant. Sure enough, another palm appeared out of thin air and wanted to catch the slaughter spirit. If it were not for Zi Chen's quick reaction, the slaughter spirit would have been caught in the other party's hand. Run! Chapter 5335. Zi Chen did not give Marcus, who was in the 4th degree realm, the slightest time to react. His whole set of attacks almost took his opponent's life. The premise was that the immortal technique did not appear. Trying to escape? An old voice rang in the sky. Buzz! The sky shook, and a huge palm fell from above. It covered a radius of several hundred feet. Zi Chen only felt that he was locked in by a terrifying pressure. His body seemed to have fallen into a swamp, and it was difficult to move. He shouted and looked up at the sky. Golden light shone around his body, and the immortal golden body was fully activated. He clenched his fists and crossed them, and a golden shield appeared above his head. At the same time, a wisp of soul power was integrated into it to enhance the defense. After doing all this, he could only resign himself to fate. After all, it was an immortal technique. He had no ability to resist or even defend. The other party was an existence that was as high as the sky. Boom! The palm print fell with an imposing manner, and Zi Chen's protection shattered in an instant. Following that, a tyrannical force poured into Zi Chen's body. It was like the Milky Way pouring down from the 9th heaven. Zi Chen's bones cracked. Even if it was the immortal golden body, it was still completely shattered at this moment. The powerful force still existed, and it hit Zi Chen's body, causing him to retreat continuously. Zi Chen's first feeling was that he was not dead. As he retreated, he took out a jade talisman and directly triggered it. Buzz! A teleportation array appeared forcefully, but Zi Chen did not step in. Instead, he forcefully controlled his body and slid back for a distance. The teleportation array in front was directly crushed by a big hand. Rumble sounded. Zi Chen secretly thought that it was a close call. His body was enveloped by the second teleportation array, and he disappeared under the waves of ripples. He ran away. The pale Marcus stood up and saw the scene of Zi Chen disappearing. He was slightly stunned and felt that it was unbelievable. At this moment, he suddenly sensed a tyrannical aura fluctuation 10,000 feet away. It's Master. I knew it. He won't escape so easily. Marcus was extremely excited. With a rumble, there was no movement. Marcus immediately waved his hand and said, "Help me, let's go over and take a look." In the distance, there were still some first-layer, heavenly layers who hadn't died. At this moment, they rushed over and took Marcus away. There were only traces of blood and a huge handprint. There were no bones or corpses. Not dead. Marcus was taken aback. How is that possible? One had to know that the one who attacked was his master. Even though there was a long distance between them, his power was definitely not something that a mere first-level heavenly law could block. Following that, rumbling sounds could be heard in several other places. Marcus chased after him, but apart from the blood, he found nothing else. Half a day later, he returned and saw his master on the mountain peak. His master's expression was extremely ugly. His gloomy expression was filled with boundless killing intent. Marcus still wanted to ask about that guy, but when he saw his master's expression, he didn't dare to open his mouth. The result was obvious. Let's go. In the end, the old man let out a sigh. Marcus was taken aback. Leave? We've already alerted the enemy, and the exiled grounds have disappeared. The old man turned and left in an extremely depressed mood. Damn little thing, if this old man meets him, I'll definitely grind his bones to dust. Zi Chen had been teleported countless times along the way. Anyway, he didn't have much on him, but he had a lot of escaped jade talismans. The immortal technique was indeed terrifying, attacking him from a distance many times. If not for Zi Chen's caution, he would have died long ago. However, after dozens of teleportations, Zi Chen couldn't take it anymore. His injuries were very serious, almost to the point of life-threatening, and he needed to heal as soon as possible. Seeing a messy stone forest, Zi Chen immediately flashed in. Zi Chen wasn't surprised by this scene. Before leaving the exiled grounds, he had communicated with Gu Shan's clone. Zi Chen used that fourth-layer heavenly law as bait to lure the immortal technique out of hiding, and used the exiled grounds as an excuse to leave. As for whether the other party would fall for it or not, it was actually not important. If it appeared, the exiled grounds would disappear. If it didn't appear, it would die. As for the others, they would definitely be killed by Zi Chen. At that time, no one could use the immortal technique, and they wouldn't be able to find the exiled grounds. The sky was dark, the blood moon rose into the sky, and the surroundings were cold. Zi Chen felt that his aura was fading faster. After a day, his injuries didn't recover much. At night, Zi Chen's soul power spread out, enveloping a radius of 100,000 feet. Originally, his soul power could extend to 30,000 feet away, but now he could only use 1/3 of his original strength. A few ancestral beasts appeared on the nearby mountains. As if sensing Zi Chen's strength, they didn't approach. Only when the sky brightened did they leave. Zi Chen closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, withdrawing his soul power to 50,000 feet. He had already refined about 1/3 of the energy of a heavenly law crystal, but his injuries didn't improve significantly. Even his physical body hadn't recovered. There seemed to be a strange force between the broken bones, preventing them from healing. It was the residual power of the immortal technique. Another 2 days passed, and his injuries still didn't improve. Fortunately, it didn't worsen. Zichen opened his eyes, and his expression gradually turned gloomy. Damn it. The remnants of the immortal technique's power in his body prevented his injuries from recovering. At that moment, he could barely unleash the strength of a first-level heavenly law expert. Buzz! Zichen activated his immortal true body. Golden light flickered, but it was clearly intermittent. A moment later, Zichen withdrew his power and said with a bitter smile, "At this rate, I'm afraid it'll take several years to expel the remnant power of the immortal technique." Zichen complained, but he clearly didn't know how lucky he was. If it were anyone else, just this remnant power was enough to kill them. Not only did Zichen not die, but he could also slowly expel this power. This was actually very impressive. Continuing to stay here was already a waste of time, so Zichen planned to find another way. After walking out of the stone forest, Zichen looked around. There was no one here, nor were there any other signs. All 4 directions looked the same, so he could only choose a random direction. He glanced at the north. Back then, Almai had asked him to go to the north. "Let's go in this direction." Zichen headed north. He traveled during the day and healed at night, but the effect was still not obvious. 5 days passed, and Zichen still didn't find anything. Apart from the ancestral beast, there was nothing else. Morning of the 6th day. Zichen was just about to hurry when he suddenly turned his head to look behind him. A gust of wind blew over. As the wind advanced, its power grew stronger and stronger, finally turning into a tornado with a vast momentum. Zichen's soul power immediately extended over. The sudden appearance of such a storm was clearly abnormal, but just as his soul power came into contact with the storm, it was as if someone had cut off his soul power with a knife. A stabbing pain came. Zichen's expression couldn't help but change. He was actually unable to use his soul power to investigate. With his current injuries, he didn't dare to approach. Zichen avoided the storm and continued forward. Another 2 days passed, and Zichen finally saw traces of humans. This made a hint of joy appear on his face. He could finally ask for directions. It was 2 people traveling together. Both of them looked very young. One was wearing a green robe, the other was wearing a black robe. Zichen approached the 2 and said, "May I ask?" Without waiting for Zichen to finish, the green-robed young man smiled and said, "No problem, we agree." This made Zichen stunned, somewhat at a loss. The black-robed young man, on the other hand, looked at Zichen indifferently. No need to be surprised. After all, one more person is one more force. The green-robed young man stepped forward and said, "I'm Douglas, he's Joshua. What's your name?" "Zichen." Douglas smiled and said, "I see that your strength isn't high, only level 1 of law destruction, right? According to the rules, we have to listen to Joshua. After all, he's level 2 of law destruction." Currently, Zichen's realm was indeed only level 1 of law destruction. The black-robed young man, Joshua, looked at Zichen and said, "You 2 listen to my commands from now on. I can guarantee that we'll definitely be able to find the immortal spirit fragment." Immortal spirit fragment? Zichen was taken aback again. Douglas patted Zichen's shoulder and said, "No need to be so dramatic. This isn't a secret anymore. Many people have come recently." Zichen was still very confused, but he didn't show it. He just laughed. "Who do you think is so powerful that they can actually kill an immortal?" Douglas exclaimed, "I've never even seen an immortal before. I can't believe such a legendary existence died just like that." Zichen was also shocked. "An immortal is dead?" Douglas said, "Of course. Otherwise, why would there be immortal spirit fragments scattered?" Then he sighed again. Immortals are almost godlike existences in this wasteland, but they can actually die. Asterisk, 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 asterisk in a restaurant. At a table by the window, 3 people were drinking wine. One of them had a long scar on his face. As for the other 2, they seemed to be slightly older. No matter how much wine you drink, the taste is still not good. At this moment, 2 people walked in. One was an old man, and the other was a young man. Find a private room. After the old man came in, he said indifferently. At this moment, the young man suddenly said, "Master." The old man turned his head in confusion. He saw the young man stretch out his hand and quietly point in a certain direction. The old man followed the young man's finger and saw the 3 people. His gaze fell on the scarred man. The old man was stunned at first. Then he laughed sinisterly. "Little thing, so you're here." He walked straight forward. "This old man thought you died in some corner. I didn't expect you to be here." After he approached, he looked at the scarred man. "What? You think this old man won't recognize you just because you have a scar on your face?" The scarred man raised his head and looked at the old man in front of him. "You know me? Little thing, you dare to pretend in front of this old man." The old man's face was full of disdain. "Believe it or not, this old man will slap you to death." He released his aura. In an instant, cries of surprise rang out. An immortal technique. The others in the restaurant looked at the old man in shock. Although this level was not a legendary existence like immortals, he was definitely a godlike figure. The scarred man did not speak. Facing the aura of this immortal technique, he was even more indifferent. He looked at the 2 people next to him. One of the middle-aged men said excitedly, "It's him, it must be him, he's here." The other person also nodded and said, "He's finally here." The scarred man smiled slightly, then looked at the old man. "Thank you for telling me this news." After saying that, he slapped down. Boom! The entire restaurant shook. The old man's body exploded with a bang. It was just a slap. He just killed an immortal technique. Chapter 5336. How do we find the immortal soul fragment? Zi-chan joined the 2 and asked the question in his heart. The reason why he stayed was because he felt that the immortal soul fragment might help him recover. After all, Zi-chan had just broken into the 1st level of Heaven Law, and before he could enjoy the power of Heaven Law, he was beaten back to his original state. Joshua, who was at the 2nd level of annihilation, said, "Look for the storm. The immortal soul fragment is in the storm." What? Zi-chin was dumbfounded. The 2 noticed that Zi-chen's expression was strange, and Douglas asked in surprise, "You've seen it before?" Zi-chin nodded and said, "I saw it before, but its power was too terrifying and I was scared away." The 2 looked at Zi-chin, not knowing what to say. He was scared away by the storm. How weak was this Zi-chin? He was at least at the 1st level of annihilation, right? Zi-chin was also annoyed. If he knew that there was an immortal soul fragment in the storm, he would have checked it out no matter what. Joshua said, "If the immortal soul fragment hasn't been found, it will definitely appear again." "Yes, Zi-chin, do you remember the way? Let's go back and find it immediately." Zi-chin nodded again. Next, the 3 of them went together to search for opportunities. When they turned back, Zi-chin sensed that something was wrong. The number of ancestral beasts had obviously increased along the way. Even during the day, they could be seen everywhere. "Get out of the way or die." Douglas saw a group of ancestral beasts blocking the way. The highest realm among them was only around the 9th level of spirit cultivation. As Douglas released his aura, the group of ancestral beasts became restless. But they didn't retreat. "You guard Zi-chin. I'll deal with these bastards." Douglas coldly snorted and rushed forward. Joshua said, "There will definitely be more danger. You have to be careful, because at the crucial moment, I may not be able to protect you." "Got it." Zi-chin nodded. Dogus stepped forward and attacked aggressively. After killing the strongest of the ancestral beasts, the other ancestral beasts dispersed in a hubbub. Look, there's a storm ahead. After slaying the ancestral beast, Dogus suddenly pointed up ahead and yelled in excitement. At the end of his field of vision, a huge tornado appeared. Let's go, there's a celestial fragment there. Joshua shouted and immediately stepped forward. Zichin followed him. The ancestral beasts that had fled earlier all turned around and charged toward the storm. Zichin released his soul power once more. The instant it came into contact with the storm, he felt a piercing pain once more. It was the same as the storm he encountered last time. Was there really a celestial spirit fragment here? At this moment, Zichin still had doubts in his heart. With a rumbling sound, the three were now less than 1 kilometer away from the storm. Dog suddenly let out a cry of alarm, and his face instantly turned pale. Don't use your soul power. This storm has a destructive effect on souls. Joshua said in a deep voice, it's an immortal's relic, after all. Even if it has lost its consciousness, it still carries the immortal's aura. Displaying your soul power in front of an immortal, isn't that just courting death? Joshua's reminder made Zichin nod his head. He was already so close to the storm, but he didn't sense any danger. If he didn't use his soul power the first time and tried it himself, he might have already obtained the fragment and neutralized the remaining immortal power in his body. The closer he was to the storm, the stronger the pressure. However, as long as he didn't use his soul power, there was no danger. The celestial spirit fragment is inside. Find a relatively weak area, and let's rush in. Joshua's gaze wandered around the storm, looking for an opportunity. Countless air currents were spinning, looking like blades. However, this storm was not regular. There were weak and strong parts in the middle, and there were indeed loopholes to exploit. However, this required an extremely accurate grasp of the storm's timing and one's own speed. Otherwise, one would be swept into the storm. Be careful! Joshua cried out in alarm. He suddenly reached out and pulled Zichin in a different direction. Swoosh! A stream of light came from afar and landed where Zichin was previously standing, erupting with a loud explosion. Zichin turned his head and saw a person standing there with a face full of regret. What a pity, what a pity. He was very regretful that he didn't manage to beat Zichin in. What are you doing? Douglas immediately went up and glared at the person. The other party smiled faintly and said, Naturally, I'm giving you a chance to obtain the celestial spirit fragment. He pointed at Zichin and said, You go in now. The celestial spirit fragment has appeared, but you're just standing there in a daze. Silly. Why should I? Douglas said angrily. Whether we go in or not depends on whether we're willing. Childish. The other party smiled disdainfully and then released his own aura. 4th level of law annihilation. Sensing the other party's aura, Douglas's expression changed immediately. Even Joshua's expression became extremely grave. Zichin was slightly stunned. He almost forgot which realm he was in when he killed a 4th level of law annihilation. Was it the 1st or 2nd level? You, go in immediately or die. After releasing the 4th level's aura, the other party's gaze became extremely cold. At this moment he stared at Zichin, as though he had fixed his eyes on him. Zichin was hesitating. He was hesitating whether he should go in first or kill this fellow first. Don't go. Joshua's voice suddenly rang in Zichin's mind. This fellow obviously wants to kill us one by one. What are you still in a daze for? Do you want to die? A murderous intent appeared and locked onto Zichin. Zichin's eyes narrowed slightly. Just at this moment, the storm in front suddenly disappeared. When the storm appeared, there were no signs at all. It disappeared immediately, similarly without any signs. This made the few of them stunned. Swoosh! The 4th level of law annihilation turned into a flowing light and moved forward. Apparently, he wanted to see if there was anything left behind. Zichen's soul power had already extended out, but there was nothing there. Hurry up and leave. Joshua gave a low shout, indicating for the three of them to run first. The fourth level of law annihilation turned back at this moment. He looked at Zichen and the other two. The three of you follow me. Your fortune is here. Next, I'll bring the few of you to take a look at the big shots. The three of them exchanged glances, sensing the murderous intent around the other party. Joshua finally nodded his head. Based on the three of their current abilities, even if they risked their lives, it was impossible for them to defeat a fourth level of law annihilation. Following that, the three of them followed the other party and headed towards a certain direction. Very soon, they met a group of people. There were about 40 over people in this group. The fourth level of law annihilation immediately went forward and bowed towards one of them with a respectful expression, not knowing what he was saying. He's actually so respectful. What realm is that person at? A shocked expression appeared on Dogus's face. Zichen said he's at least at the 8th level of law annihilation. His soul power had just swept past. So strong? A bitter smile immediately appeared on Dogus's face. How can we gain anything by staying with such an existence? Joshua's expression was also very ugly. He originally came here to look for opportunities, but he didn't expect to meet this group of people. Everyone were from Titan City. This time, we're only here for one thing. If everyone cooperates after this matter is completed, there will definitely be a handsome reward. The 8th level of law annihilation looked at the crowd. Don't worry, we're not here for the immortal essence fragment, so we won't fight with you. The surroundings immediately went into an uproar. If it's not for the immortal essence fragment, then what is it for? Dogus couldn't help but be stunned. Joshua shook his head. Could it be that there's something more important than the immortal essence fragment? Zichen also frowned slightly. These are your rewards. The 8th level of law annihilation waved his hand, and instantly pieces of law annihilation crystal flew out, all of which were of the 2nd level. Next, all of you work harder. 1 piece for each of them. Such a large sum of money made Dogus even more amazed. After that, the 8th level of law annihilation brought everyone to the next place. When they arrived at the destination, there were already hundreds of people gathered there. The 8th level of law annihilation bowed respectfully towards the person in front. This action caused the crowd to go into an uproar again. Even the 8th level of law annihilation needs to bow respectfully. Could the other party be a heaven law realm cultivator? Dogus's eyes widened as his face was filled with disbelief. He was only at the 1st level of law annihilation realm, and to him, heaven law was absolutely a high and mighty figure. But following that, a shocking scene happened again. A young man flew over from the horizon. He was dressed in a white robe and was extraordinarily handsome. When he neared that existence which was suspected to be heaven law, immediately bowed towards the other party. What are all of you in a daze for? Aren't you going to pay your respects to young master? Heaven law turned his head back in dissatisfaction. The others then realized in hindsight and bowed as well. The young man waved his hand and said, "No need to stand on ceremony." Following that, he lowered his voice and said to heaven law, "Let's wait for the others and move together when the time comes." Not long after, a few more teams of 100 people arrived at the scene. Among these people, the lowest realm was at the 1st level of law annihilation realm, while the highest was the leader, who was at the heaven law realm. When they arrived, they immediately bowed towards the young man. Titan City, I remember now. He must be Titan City's young lord, Mo Yunling. Dogus grabbed Zichen's arm and said agitatedly, "It must be him, that 4th level heaven law realm Mo Yunling." This time, even Joshua had a shocked expression on his face. There was even a hint of respect on his face. Zichen asked, "Is he very famous?" "A high and mighty 4th level heaven law realm. Do you think he's famous or not? Dogus said agitatedly. Moreover, he's a 4th-level Heaven Law realm with Titan bloodline. His battle strength is comparable to a 6th-level Heaven Law realm. My goodness, I really didn't expect that Dogus could meet such a big shot. He grabbed Zichen's arm tightly. This time we didn't lose out. We didn't lose out at all. Working for such a big shot, we've made a huge profit. Zichen's reaction was very calm. He took another look at that young man. But his injuries were not light, and his soul power was also damaged. Hence, he did not dare to release his soul power on his own accord. When the number of people in the team neared 1,000, the young man immediately waved his hand and said, "Let's go! Everyone follow me." Everyone was divided into their original teams again. The leader of each team was at the Heaven Law realm. Not long after advancing, a piece of news quietly spread out. These people's true goal was to find the ancient technique fragment. Ancient technique fragment, what's that? Looking at the mysterious Dogus, Zichen was a little puzzled. He seemed to have heard of it somewhere before. Dogus lowered his voice and said agitatedly, "The fragment of the ancient technique of the world." Zichen's expression changed slightly. He finally remembered. Back then, Gushan's clone said that the self-created combat technique was the most suitable for him and also the strongest. Only the ancient technique could suppress it. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.